No one sent letters anymore, not real ones. Not in the world of encrypted feeds, silent channels, and digital pings. So when Callan Ward, reconnaissance specialist and field operator with 8 years of deep infiltration experience, returned from a training run to find an envelope sitting on his bunk, covered in mud and sealed with wax, he knew something was wrong. Very wrong. He lifted the letter slowly, studying the faint symbol pressed into the wax. A crescent moon intersected by a blade. A mark he hadn't seen in years. A mark he never wanted to see again. He tore it open. One line. One sentence. Written without a signature. "We have Lyra. If you come for her, come alone." The world fell silent. The jungle outside the base hummed with its usual life. Cicadas screaming in the leaves. Distant howler monkeys roaring like ancient beasts. But Callan didn't hear any of it. Only her name. Lyra Hale. His partner, his closest friend. The woman who had saved his life 3 times and mocked him for keeping count. The woman with whom he had crossed war zones, deserts, and forgotten hill forts. A medic, a marksman, a strategist, a woman who could stare death in the eyes and bargain with it. And now she was missing. Captured. Taken by a ghost organization that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Callan closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. They had made a mistake. They thought threatening him would scare him. It only gave him clarity. "All right," he whispered to himself. "I'm coming." The base commander slammed his fist on the table when Callan handed him the letter. "No, absolutely not." Callan said nothing. "You are not going alone into the Crimson Maw territory. That jungle eats full battalions. That organization, the Black Choir, was eradicated years ago." Callan finally spoke, voice firm and sharp. "They weren't eradicated. They just went underground. You don't have proof. I have Lyra's absence." Silence. The commander inhaled deeply, rubbing his temples. "Callan, you're good. One of the best reconnaissance operatives we've ever trained. But the Black Choir is." Callan interrupted with the calmness of someone who had already decided. "She's alive. If she were dead, they wouldn't have sent a letter." The commander paled. "Then this is bait." "Of course it's bait. Then you'll walk into a trap." Callan shrugged. "Wouldn't be the first time." The commander stared at him for a long moment, then looked away. "You'll get no official support. If this goes wrong, you were never here." Callan nodded once. "Understood." He turned to leave. "Callan." The commander's voice softened. "Bring her home." Callan didn't look back. "I will." The Crimson Maw jungle was not a place people entered willingly. The canopy was so thick it choked the sunlight. The air was wet enough to breathe like soup. The ground was a labyrinth of moss-covered ruins, beast trails, and roots thick as arms. Callan moved silently, blending with the greens and shadows. His gear was minimal. Lightweight, suppressed rifle. Machete. Compact medical kit. Rope. Thermal cloak. Tracking beacon. 2 water flasks. And a locket Lyra once gave him, scratched metal with a compass inside. "You always get lost," she teased when she gifted it. He always denied it. Now he clutched it like a vow. 3 hours into the jungle crawl, he found the first clue. A strip of blue fabric caught on a thorn. Her fabric. Her uniform. He ran his fingers over it gently, still warm from the sun, not stiff with dew. Dropped maybe a day ago. His chest tightened. He moved faster. But the jungle shifted around him. The air grew heavier. No birds. No wind. Just silence. Thick, unnatural silence. Callan froze. Something was watching him. Not animals. Eyes. Human ones. The arrow struck the tree directly beside his head. Another embedded in the ground near his boot. Silent, precise, deadly. Callan dropped to the dirt, rolled behind a trunk, and scanned. Movement, flickers of black between leaves. The Black Choir. Their assassins were trained to move like mist. Callan dove as a third arrow cut through the air where his neck had been. He fired once, a single suppressed shot. A body fell from the trees. The remaining assassins hesitated, reassessing. Callan smirked. "Yeah, I see you. He sprinted forward, using their surprise as momentum. The fight was brutal, close quarters, a dance of blades and fists. He slammed one attacker into a root knot, swept another's legs, elbowed a third in the throat. When the last one fell, Callan wiped sweat from his brow. You boys need better aim. He collected a dagger from one of them, curved, ornate, bearing the same crescent blade mark from the letter. Proof. He was on the right path. But as he turned to continue deeper into the jungle, he saw something half buried beneath leaves. A boot print. Small. Lyra's. Fresh. His pulse steadied. She's still moving, he murmured. And he moved with purpose. The walk gave him time to think, which was dangerous. Memories slid in like mist. He remembered her laugh, sharp, bright, cutting through tension. He remembered their first mission together. She stitched a bullet wound on his arm with a thread she stole from a general's jacket. He remembered her saying, "You jump into danger too fast." And he replied, "And you follow too fast." She smirked. "Someone has to drag you out when you fall." Callan clenched his jaw. He wasn't going to let that memory be ironic. Not today. By dusk, he reached the ancient ruins, broken stone pyramids swallowed by vines. The Black Choir once used these ruins as listening posts. That was before the governments burned their archives and claimed victory. Victory was a lie. He stepped inside one of the stone chambers. The smell hit him immediately. Blood. He swept his flashlight over the floor. Symbols painted in ash. Chants carved into stone. A chain snapped apart. And in the corner, her knife. Callan knelt beside it. The blade was cracked. The grip bloodied. But she left it here. Intentionally. A message. A direction. A promise she was still resisting. He breathed out slowly. "Hold on, Lyra. I'm coming." As he exited the ruins, he heard coughing. He pointed his rifle, cautiously. A young man leaned against a tree, badly injured, arrow through his thigh. Callan approached, crouching. "Who did this?" The man swallowed weakly. "The choir. They took her to the drowned village." "Where?" "Where the water swallowed the ground. Old ruins, deep swamp forbidden." Callan leaned closer. "Is she alive?" The survivor nodded painfully. "They need her alive. She's valuable." He didn't elaborate. The man's breathing slowed. Callan tightened a tourniquet on the leg and injected a stabilizer. "You'll live. Stay hidden." "Why help me?" the man whispered. Callan's gaze hardened. "Because she would have done the same." Then he disappeared back into the jungle. Night in the Crimson Maw was not truly night. The canopy trapped heat and created a heavy darkness that felt alive, as though the jungle breathed around him. Callan moved with caution. The ground became softer. The smell changed, damp, thick, rotting vegetation. And somewhere ahead, unseen, drums. Low, steady, ritualistic. The Black Choir was preparing something. Something for Lyra. Callan gripped his rifle tighter. "I'm close," he whispered. He reached the edge of the swamp, water black like ink, roots twisting like ancient bones. Torches flickered on platforms built above the water. Shadows moved. Dozens of choir members. Guarding cages suspended over the water. One cage held a silhouette. Female. Still. Head bowed. Callan's heart punched against his ribs. Lyra. Alive. Captured. Restrained. Surrounded by killers. He inhaled deeply. The swamp hummed. The torches crackled. And his mission sharpened into a single clear thought. He would burn the entire jungle down before letting them harm her again. The deeper Callan moved into the drowned village, the heavier the air became, thick with rot, heat, and the scent of oil burning from the torches that lined the raised wooden platforms. It was as if the swamp itself resented his presence. The Black Choir had chosen this place well. It was unreachable except by foot, impossible to assault in groups, and filled with hidden sinkholes that swallowed men whole. But Callan didn't have a choice. He stepped onto the first submerged log and listened to it creak under his weight. Every sound echoed like a warning. Then he heard her. A faint shift. A soft exhale. His heart tightened. Lyra. She was alive, just ahead. Suspended in a cage above black water that seemed to move on its own. Callan crouched, studying the layout. One main platform shaped like a ring. Ritual markings everywhere. 4 snipers in elevated positions. At least 20 guards on foot. And in the center, the high priest, cloaked in bone ornaments, chanting in a language Callan barely recognized. This wasn't just imprisonment. It was preparation. A ritual. An offering. And Lyra was the centerpiece. The high priest raised a torch. Tonight, he intoned, the forest accepts her gift. The veteran healer. The sharp-sighted medic. The one who escaped death more times than the spirits allow. Lyra lifted her head slightly. Her face was bruised, but her eyes held fire. Even bound, even injured, she wasn't broken. Callan whispered, "That's my girl." He steadied his breathing. He had to wait for the right moment. He always did. But then, the high priest leaned close to Lyra. "Your friend will come for you." He whispered loud enough for the guards to hear. He always does. But tonight, he will join you beneath the black water. Callan smiled dryly. "Over my dead body." Callan needed a way to reduce their numbers without alerting the entire camp. He spotted a lone guard near the edge of a platform. He moved through the shallow water almost silently, years of training making every step calculated. He reached the guard, grabbed him by the collar, pressed a blade to his throat, and whispered, "Scream and you'll see how quickly the swamp digests people." The guard trembled but nodded. "Where are the keys?" Callan asked. On the priest." "Of course," Callan sighed. "That would be too easy." One quick motion, and the guard fell silently into the swamp. Water swallowed him without a sound. Another problem handled. But the real work was just starting. Callan needed Lyra to know he was there. Needed her calm. Focused. Ready. He reached into his pocket and found a small reflective disc, scratched from years of use. A private signal. Just between them. He angled it toward the torchlight and flicked it twice. A shimmer danced across her cage. Lyra blinked. Then her expression changed. Pain melted into determination. Fear into steel. She shifted slightly, leaning toward the bars so the nearest guard couldn't see her lips. He read them perfectly. "You're late." Callan grinned. "Save the complaints for after I break you out." Callan had no explosives. No backup. No drones. No comms. Just a suppressed rifle. 3 knives. Rope. A flare. And decades of stubborn resilience. Perfect. He whispered to himself. All right. Step 1, chaos. He found a fallen branch, lit it with a small ignition spark from his survival kit, and tossed it onto a nearby oil-soaked banner. The fire spread quickly. Too quickly. Callan raised an eyebrow. Bit more dramatic than planned, but fine. The guards shouted, running toward the flames. Some grabbed water buckets. Others drew weapons. The snipers shifted position. The high priest hissed in frustration. Perfect. Callan raised his rifle and exhaled slowly. For shots. For suppressed whispers. For silhouettes fell from their towers into the swamp. Lyra watched with a small, ghost-like grin. "You cocky bastard," she mouthed. Callan winked. Callan climbed onto the platform and moved swiftly. But as he turned toward Lyra's cage, a wooden gate slammed shut behind him. He spun. 10 masked warriors stood between him and the priest. Black choir elite. Their masks carved from bone. Their movements exact, ritualistic. Their leader stepped forward. "We knew you would come, Shadow Walker." Callan rolled his eyes. "You guys and your dramatic titles. You are the veteran who stole our relics. The one who burned our archives. The one who..." Callan held up a hand. "Can we skip the list? I'm on a tight schedule." They rushed him. The fight was brutal. Callan ducked under a blade, slammed a knee into a mask, disarmed another, grabbed a falling spear, and swept 2 attackers off the platform. He moved like a man who had survived 1,000 battles. Because he had. But even he couldn't keep this up forever. One blade sliced his arm. Another cracked his ribs. A third nearly took his ear clean off. He stumbled back, panting. Then, a metal clank. A chain rattling. He turned. Lyra, still tied, had managed to swing her cage violently, slamming it into two attackers and knocking them into the swamp. "Thought you could use a hand," she called out. Callan laughed through the pain. "That's my partner." The priest raised his hands. "Enough." The remaining guards froze. "You want justice, Shadow Walker?" he said. "Then receive it." He snapped his fingers. A trapdoor beneath Lyra's cage opened. Water began rising. Dark, murky, cold. Lyra's cage sank inch by inch. Callan's heart exploded with panic. "No." The priest smiled. "The swamp hungers for veterans." Callan charged. He slammed into the priest, knocking him onto the burning platform. Guards surged forward. Lyra's cage dipped deeper, water licking her boots, her legs. She locked eyes with Callan. No fear, no panic, just trust. "Callan," she whispered. He roared her name and dived toward the chain controls as fire, water, and warriors collided in a storm of chaos. Callan slammed his shoulder into the wooden wool controlling the cage mechanism. It barely budged. Water had already reached Lyra's knees. Cold, black swamp water that hid serpents, insects, and creatures no one had properly identified. "Callan," she shouted, struggling against her bindings. "Focus. The left wheel controls the descent." "I'm trying," he yelled back, kicking the wheel again. Two guards rushed at him. He ducked, rolled, grabbed a fallen spear, and slammed it through the spokes of the wheel. The chain jerked, screeched, then stopped. The cage hung suspended just above the waterline. Lyra exhaled shakily. Callan turned, straight into a punch that split his lip open. He staggered back as two black choir warriors closed in. "Persistent, aren't you?" Callan muttered, wiping the blood with the back of his hand. One warrior lunged. Callan sidestepped and let the man's momentum carry him straight into the burning platform. The second fighter hesitated. Callan grinned. Smart, but not smart enough. One swift kick sent the man over the edge into the swamp. The jungle swallowed him instantly. The cage was stuck, but the door had weakened from repeated impacts. Lyra swung again, using all her weight, and a wooden bar cracked. Another swing. Another crack. Finally, she forced her shoulder through the gap and snapped the weakened support beam with a grunt of pain. "That's my girl," Callan said, beaming despite the chaos. Lyra climbed out, wincing as her bruised ribs protested. "You're late," she said. "I brought entertainment. You brought a forest fire." Details. The high priest, burned and furious, staggered to his feet. "You think she was the sacrifice?" he rasped. "You think this ends with blood in the swamp?" He raised both hands. "And now the jungle itself judges you." He smashed a vial onto the wooden planks. A thick, green smoke burst outward, spreading like liquid fog. Callan coughed violently. "Poison?" "No," Lyra rasped, eyes widening. "Hallucinogen." Voices erupted from the fog. Whispers, screams, memories. Callan heard his father. He heard every soldier he failed to save. He heard Lyra's voice calling his name from a battle years ago, when he thought she had died. But Lyra grabbed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Stay with me. This isn't real. Callan, look at me." Her voice cut through the illusions like a blade. His mind snapped back into place. "Right?" Callan said, shaking his head. "Hallucinations. That's cheating." The priest grinned. "War always cheats." Callan raised his rifle. "So do I." One shot. The priest fell into the swamp. The water swallowed him whole. "Time to go," Callan said, pulling Lyra close as flames engulfed the platform. They jumped to a lower walkway and ran as it collapsed behind them. Lyra limped. He noticed. "You okay?" "Nothing broken, but my leg's not thrilled." "Can you run?" "Try and stop me." They reached solid ground just as the entire swamp village went up in flames. The sky glowed orange. Smoke billowed into the canopy. Animals shrieked and fled. They had escaped the ritual, but not the jungle, because drums began in the distance. Dozens of them. Then a voice, deep, metallic, broadcast over the treetops. Find them. Bring them alive. Lyra's face paled. That's not the choir. Callan nodded grimly. No, that's worse. They heard engines. Big ones. Not military helicopters, but heavy armored transports with quiet rotors. Through the trees, dark shapes emerged. Iron Serpents, an elite mercenary group known for jungle operations. They had hunted governments, overthrown warlords, destroyed villages, and whoever hired them wanted Lyra back badly. Callan muttered, "We're in deep trouble." Define deep. Serpents don't take prisoners deep. Lyra sighed. Great. I hate these guys. They ran. Through ferns. Through mud. Through clouds of insects. Their breathing loud. Feet pounding. Branches whipping their faces. Behind them, searchlights cut through the jungle. Orders barked. Dogs released. Heat scanners deployed. Callan pulled Lyra down behind a fallen tree. She pressed against him, catching her breath. Any bright ideas? She whispered. A few, he said. All bad. She smiled faintly. Give me the worst one. He pointed to a narrow canyon ahead. We jump in. Lyra blinked. That's a ravine full of river snakes. I said worst, not best. She squeezed his arm. I trust you. That was all he needed. They sprinted toward the ravine. Bullets cut through the branches above. Dogs barked at their heels. Searchlights narrowed. And then, they leapt. Cold, filthy water swallowed them, dragging them deep. Shapes moved beneath them. Long bodies, cold scales, snapping jaws. Callan grabbed Lyra's wrist and kicked upward. A snake brushed his leg. He kicked it away. Another wrapped around Lyra's boot. She ripped a knife free and slashed it. They surfaced, gasping. The ravine carried them downstream, smashing them into rocks and roots. But it also carried them away from the serpents. Callan spat out water. This is worst plan ever. You said jump. You actually did it. Only because you would have drowned without me. He smiled through the pain. Fair enough. The river eventually dumped them near a moss-covered stone wall, an ancient structure swallowed by vines. Callan, Lyra whispered, wiping mud from her face. I know this place. He frowned. What is it? A pre-war research outpost. Abandoned 50 years ago. But, her eyes narrowed. It shouldn't be active. A faint light flickered inside. Voices. Equipment humming. Someone was using the outpost. Callan's expression hardened. Then let's find out who. They pushed open the rusted door. Inside, a fully functional command base. Maps. Screens. Transmissions. Boxes marked with military-grade equipment. And then, a familiar voice. Well, look who survived the swamp. Callan froze. Lyra's face drained of color. Because standing before them was Marcus Vale, their former commanding officer. Presumed dead. The man who betrayed their unit years ago. The man who sold soldiers for intel. The man who left Lyra to die once before. Lyra whispered. No, impossible. Marcus smiled. Hello, you two. Miss me? Callan raised his rifle. Marcus lifted his hands casually. Relax. If I wanted you dead, the serpents would have finished the job. Lyra's voice trembled with fury. You sold us out. Marcus shrugged. I prefer the term strategic realignment. Callan's jaw tightened. Where is the choir? Why take Lyra? Why hunt us? Marcus grinned. Because you two are the final pieces of a very large puzzle. He pressed a button. A hologram appeared. A world map. Red zones. Shadow networks. Black choir symbols. Marcus leaned in. The jungle wants blood. But I want something bigger. He looked directly at Lyra. And you, my dear medic, are the key. Lyra's eyes widened in horror. Callan stepped in front of her. Over my dead body. Marcus smiled coldly. That can be arranged. Lights cut out. The jungle roared. And part ends with the world plunging into darkness. To be continued in part 2. If you enjoy heroic military fiction, tactical storytelling, and cinematic narratives, subscribe for more powerful stories every week.